Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webcast, Inside ICS613, Building a Strong Offense for ICS/OT. Our featured speakers today are Jason Deely, Don C. Weber, and Tyler Webb. If during the webcast you have any questions for our speakers, please feel free to enter them into the Q&A window at any time. Please note that this webcast is being recorded, and a copy of the slides and recording will all be available for viewing in the next 7 days, all of which can be found on the SANS registration page. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to our speakers.
Hey everybody, it's Don C. Weber, and welcome to the Inside ICS 613, Building a Stronger Offense for ICS and OT. And this class this is our opportunity to kind of present the hard work that we've been doing for the last couple of years. We've certainly had some setbacks, but finally we're seeing the culmination of everybody's hard work in developing this new class, the ICS 613, ICS and OT penetration testing and assessments course. What we're going to do today, let me click on my slides, this is going to be our agenda. We're going to kind of introduce you to what ICS 613 is. We're going to talk about some of the things that we know from your goals perspective, both the audience for this class, for this webinar, but also the audience for the students that are going to be taking the class. We're going to talk about some of the instructors' goals, what our intent was when we were developing this class, and what we want students to walk away with and your teams to walk away with once those students come back with this knowledge from this course back into your organizations and start applying this in the real world. We'll talk about some of the course prerequisites and then get into actual meat. What are each one of our sections going to cover? As we get into that, as we're going through, Jason and Tyler will be providing some of their input, some of their thoughts in these different areas, and definitely in the class and approach to the content. And then finally, we're going to end the day with a summarization and talk about your questions. Now, as we're going through, please feel free to ask questions using the mechanism that's provided through the webinar. What the facilitator will do is she will read it out to us, and if it's related to that specific question, or she might save it to the end if it's a more general question. So we're happy to answer questions as you're going through. So we'll handle it both ways. So first of all, ICS 613, what is this? Well, this course is, we feel that it's necessary within this, within the SANS training, but also within the industry, because doing penetration testings and security assessments within the industrial control environments, it's a different process. And we need to help people understand that process. We need to train the IT professionals that are going to be coming in to be doing security assessments and helping the OT teams evaluate risk within these environments. We also need the OT teams. We're hoping that they will gain knowledge around what security assessments are, making them feel more comfortable about gathering information and doing risk evaluation to help ensure availability and reliability of the process. And this course is designed specifically to augment some of the other SANS training that's out there, both ICS training, but also some of the security assessment class trainings as well. It's going to be a 5-day course. We have definitely about 4.5 days worth of content, and we're actually finding out that we're stretching that out even more because the class is so full of content right now. But that 5-day course is 4 days worth of content and a 5th day that is a capstone event. So we're still figuring that out, how all of that fits in. But right now it's a 5-day course, which means that you do earn 30 CPEs if you are taking this course. The primary authors are on this. We've been working hard on this for the last 2 years, making sure that we have equipment, that we have labs that are ICS centric, that the content is relevant as well. And you're going to see that as we're going through. So audience, obviously y'all are the audience, the webcast. What I expect that the audience, we're going to have penetration testers, red teamers on here, some SOC leads potentially, risk managers, and potentially leaders within organizations trying to understand whether or not ICS 613 is going to be effective for their teams. Do they need to send team members to do this? And certainly we want to make sure that you have that information coming out of this webinar so that you feel comfortable sending some of your team members to this course and to augment their skill sets. What the students are going to get when they come to this course. Now, obviously, we're expecting that we're going to get a lot of IT penetration testers, security assessment team members coming in to understand how to do security assessments within control environments. But I'm also seeing, in our last alpha, we had a large number of OT cybersecurity team members come in to evaluate the content, to get an understanding of, hey, what are you actually doing within this courseware? Is it relevant to the control environments? And certainly we were really pleased to get the feedback that yes, we had hit the mark in helping people understand OT security assessments, the differences for risk management between IT environments and OT environments, and that we got the technologies right. So we're really happy with that. And hopefully we'll get some of the OT risk managers and other stakeholders coming in to help them understand what cybersecurity penetration tests and security assessments are going to be within their environment, right? So we want to make sure that those students walk away from the class, they walk back to the organizations, understanding how to conduct ICS and OT penetration tests, that they can fit the outcomes, the deliverables that are coming out of these vulnerability assessments into the ICS security program and the risk management programs as well. Of course, we want to ensure that process and personnel safety during assessments. So we really emphasize that. You're going to see that, and students will experience it on a daily basis within our course about how important it is to protect personnel, but also to protect the process. And then, of course, organizations should be the team members that are coming out of this, they should be able to vet and verify that the consultants they're going to be bringing in to do these assessments, do these penetration testing, they'll have an understanding of what to expect from those individuals as well. So that's kind of what we feel the audience goals are going to be. Now, the instructor goals, and I'll admit that I made these slides. So a lot of these are from my kind of my approach to this. So first of all, personnel and process safety. I just emphasize that once again, yeah, we want to make sure that the individuals coming into these environments understand that risk, the risk to themselves, the risk to other people, and then also the risk to the processes, and that it is taken into consideration during all of the assessment phases. Okay. Ensuring process environments operate as intended when intended. That is the goal of doing risk management within these environments, is so that we are protecting the process, so that the equipment and whether it's communications or the actual devices themselves can operate and function the way we intended to do them at the moment we intended to do it. Okay. So we want to improve the availability and reliability. We want the students to have an understanding that this is the approach, this is what they're defending when they go in to evaluate the risk within those environments. Okay. Yeah, so Jason, Tyler, do you have any additional goals that you were thinking of as you were approaching the development of the class?
I've got a couple, Don. I think my first and foremost, my main goal for this class, and one of the reasons I'm so excited to be working with y'all on this is I want students to be able to leave our course knowing that they can perform an OT pen test and knowing the difference between what that is compared to performing an IT pen test in an OT environment. I was thinking about this kind of prepping for the webinar and working on the blog that we're going to put out later this week and thinking of my own experience. And I know for several years I was doing IT pen tests in OT environments and it wasn't effective, wasn't safe. It didn't have the kinds of outcomes that were useful for the asset owner, for my team, for the communities that we serve. So that's the big one, is to be able to quite simply teach folks how to do OT pen tests and to define this as a methodology for the industry. I think that's the other big goal I have here. We have pretty well understood processes and methodologies for red teaming, for IT pen tests, for enterprise pen tests. The same doesn't exist yet for ICS. And this is really kind of setting an industry baseline of how to do this safely, effectively, and valuably. So that's my big goal. That's the huge takeaway. I think we want this to be more than just a class. We want this to be a methodology that is taken and planted everywhere throughout all the different organizations, hopefully evangelized by our students, but we want this to trickle down and be used across the world.
Cool. I'll add to that. First of all, I mean, I agree with both of your objectives of this, and for me, just kind of the approach for this is, for me, has being in the OT side for my career, and doing, cybersecurity was my second career, apart from just keeping machines running. And so watching the evolution of assessments in this space and performing myself, and how that leads to organizations that then invest money to either rebuild their infrastructure, improve their defenses, add controls, adopt programs. So watching that, over my career, has really kind of showed that we're at a point right now, because we have a level of understanding. When we look at 20 years ago, we're trying to get people to even think about cybersecurity in the space outside of some particular sectors, but as a whole, it was pretty dire. Today we have a large amount of interest coming in from, whether it be IT or OT side, getting into the cybersecurity realm. And to a lot of what Tyler mentioned is that, yeah, there are differences. Technology stacks look very much the same. Even when we look at some of the new stuff, right? New solutions that are coming to the table, very IT centric, which makes sense. However, at the end of the day, for me, the goal of this is to remember what the mission is when it comes down to why these assessments exist, what we're trying to actually protect. And, the reliability of production doesn't just mean data moves, but it means that when a machine is running, it's running as it's supposed to. It's running under the conditions that were intended, and help ensuring we understand what are the implications associated to not only being able to reach a device, but understanding truthfully what can happen, or what somebody can do to that asset. And so that we can, better position an organization as to what they need to do next. Because it's not a checklist process. There is no single way of doing ICS as far as designing and engineering. The fact is, these systems are unique. As we roll up, there's some common technologies, but how they're used, how they're operationalized, how the OT team actually, performs their day-to-day functions. There are similarities within sectors, but very much differences across. And so the point is that we have to have a methodology that accommodates all those uniquenesses. And that's kind of one of the objectives to me, of this course, is to really bring this back to the ground roots of why we're all here. And we're all here to make sure that when somebody starts a pump, the pump starts. When somebody, doses, chlorine into a drinking water, it's the right amount, and it's measurable, and there's integrity and confidence that that water is potable and can be utilized. So, that's what we are about, and I think that everything around this course is really kind of bringing it home to that. So.
Yeah, and one of the things that I tried to build into, especially the start of the course, was that progression from passive to active analysis, meaning that there's a lot of understanding of what you described, Jason, that can be ascertained through some questioning, some interviews, interacting with key stakeholders that understand the environment, but also reviewing the capabilities of both the hardware and the software, how it's implemented, and just asking some standard questions, but then eventually moving into that active information gathering, understanding, verifying implementations, and the strength of doing some of that passive analysis, but also moving towards being able to do some of the more active and even penetration type activities within these environments. Thanks, y'all.
I think one real quick, Don, one other big goal for me is that students come away from this being able to communicate, well, one, to feel comfortable knowing when passive analysis is more useful or appropriate or necessary, and when active testing is useful or necessary. One of my favorite things about this whole course is the progression where we do start from passive. We're doing security assessments of environment. We're doing device level testing. We work our way up in scale or down in levels to get to the point where it is hands-on pen testing and active exploitation, and then also knowing when that needs to stop, and then we bring it back to passive. I think that's really special, in my opinion. And I think for students to be able to feel confident in themselves, to know how to do that, why it's important, is the key takeaway here. But to be able to communicate that to their peers, to leadership, to the organizations that they're working for, I think is so huge for me. In my experience, most security assessments of industrial control systems always stop at like about level 3 if we're looking at the Purdue reference model. You think like, hey, this is all we can touch. We're just gonna assume that from there on out, it's game over if someone gets down here. But there's so much more value to be had by getting rid of that paradigm or that false belief and actually peeling back those layers. And this class teaches how to do that safely, and how to communicate the value and how to communicate that it can be done safely. Anyway.
Yeah, I'll just add on that because I think it's an important piece is, we've all, even in myself, I mean, we've all done various levels within, if you wanted to call it the Purdue model. The point is we've all done, the large focus has been on the perimeter of the IT or the ICS, and rightly so, because that honestly has been, the first step in maturity is, how do I isolate this environment, and is it truly isolated? And we still have that problem today because that line is getting more blurry than ever with adoption of cloud services and so forth. So the point is that's never going away. However, I think coupled with that though is we need to start looking farther down. And there's always been some hesitancy to look farther down twofold. One, they're just trying to get their perimeter kind of sorted out, which is a pretty, big item. But two is at some point you got to start looking down and saying, what system can, is going to cause us the most problem, and what can be done to that? Because, inevitably, we have to look east to west inside and figure out, what are we doing from a production standpoint? And there may be segmentation that's put in, but we need to actually analyze that and make sure, is it effective? Where are we going to put monitoring? How is our incident response going to tie into this? If we have no knowledge of what weaknesses exist in the environment, it makes it hard to build a program or even test or tabletop a program around those things. So I think this course brings more of thinking that visibility from adversarial mindset, looking at this environment that can be not just checking a list, not just figuring out what control to use, but also looking at this in the context of how do we monitor this environment moving forward? Where do we put our sensors and so forth? And it's also, and I think that the big element of this is we're not just communicating to the OT team, because that's more than one group, but being able to tie this back to the vendors, tying it back to their contractors, their system integrators, everybody that's actually operating within that to ensure that we're looking at even the weaknesses associated with the team and the people as well. So it does cover, it carries it through that entire technology stack. And I think that that's an important part that, we need to eventually evolve to, because just buying sensors, throwing it in and saying, yep, we've got that, doesn't really necessarily mean you've added more security. So I think that's kind of, coincides with many other activities that happen within the security program as a company matures, especially. So.
As y'all can tell, that's it's no small feat trying to get all of our thoughts and our goals into
Yeah.
4 days of content. So let's get to some of the meat of that. So first of all, so the next thing I wanted to cover was the student prerequisites. Now, obviously, we are hoping this is a 600 level class, meaning that our intent is that students that are coming into this environment have some familiarity with two things. Some of that ICS knowledge, understanding what control environments are and what they're trying to do, and some of those approaches. Certainly the SANS courses, ICS 310, which is provided as a part of the start of any SANS ICS course. Your students can get access to that. ICS 410, the security essentials, and then of course implementing these environments correctly, that cybersecurity in depth. That's what we're hoping for. We're also hoping that students will be familiar with some of the penetration testing activity, even though we're going to go over and help people think about the concepts and the techniques and the tools they use from an ICS standpoint. We're still hoping that they have that background, that familiarity with doing actual security assessment work, offensive type of things, penetration testing, and so forth. So those are some of the examples of prerequisites from a SANS standpoint. One of my things that I like to cover is, what do I think that students should have coming into this class, especially it being a 600 level class. Now, we're doing our level best to make sure students have the SANS expected way of doing labs and presenting material, meaning step-by-step instructions on how to be successful in some of the information gathering techniques. However, this is, especially to a lot of individuals, it's a new type of environment, a new way of thinking. So having critical thinking, being able to expand, we can only cover so much within these courses, but being able to realize that we're setting students up to have the skill sets that they can apply to various environments, not just electrical, not just gas and oil, that can be done and used across different industries. Bringing that critical thinking on how to leverage this in different types of environments, different deployment environments, I think that's important, and I try to encourage students to do that. Now, we don't just want to run tools. And I mean, tools do help from an information gathering standpoint, but certainly understanding how to uh, do information gathering, make information gathering quicker, more effective. In other words, don't just use Wireshark to evaluate network traffic. Use some of the scripting techniques to automate some of the information gathering and information or data analysis techniques. So we're hoping that students understand a little bit about scripting, at least editing scripts, and being able to do those edits themselves. And then, of course, patience. It's this type of environment, you have to be very, very patient in your approach to information gathering. It is different than what we would do in an IT environment, meaning that we need students to understand that they've got skills, but in order to apply those skills safely and effectively within these environments, that they need to be patient. And we try to emphasize that in the course content, but also in our lab environments as well. And then, of course, this is a course that is full of material. It's full of labs that emphasize the skill sets. And we do see some students having a challenge getting all the way through. So, students should come in with the mindset that there's going to need to be extra work. That, I mean, luckily, SANS provides the PDFs before students comes on site. Reading through the material before you get there, it is going to make a huge difference in understanding the material and being ready with certain questions. And then certainly if you don't get through the labs in the time period that's allotted to keep the flat class flowing, realize that you're going to need to work through breaks, that you might work through lunch. And I know that I stay usually, depending on the facility, I stay extra. I come in early and I stay a little bit later to give students time to do those extra things. Is there anything else that Jason and Tyler, was there anything y'all were considering around that?
Yeah, I want to. Well, we have a question we'll get to in a sec, but I think some people have questioned when should I take 612 and when should I take 613? As a co-author to both of those, my selfish plug-in is you should be taking both. But um, but there is a reality. It's like where do they fit? How do they complement each other? So 612 is very much like you are filling the shoes of everybody that's involved in ICS, from electrician all the way to the security analyst response team. And so the point is that one is you're really kind of working through learning how to learn an operation, understand what an operation can look like, understand what can be weak within an operation, as well as how to architect and defend and ultimately monitor and respond. And so it's carrying you through a simulated environment. We extended on that. We still have simulated environment. It's a different environment. It's a different, I guess, simulation. Instead of being a coffee plant, it's an LNG facility. But the idea being is that this would be looked at as far as something has already been given. It can either be before architecting or it can be after architecting. So 613 is kind of a lead, and that could be, depending on where you are in your journey, it isn't so much a one versus the other, but the reality is, yes, 613 is kind of evaluating and performing an analysis against an environment or on assets or devices or solutions that are coming in and really kind of digging deep. We will touch on some of the operational elements because ultimately, that is a context that needs to be brought in as part of the reporting. The point is that one is deeper on operations to fully understand the technology stack as far as deploying and learning to be able to more or less communicate and understand what each role is, where this one is very much on the testing. I mean, it's kind of like what it says, but just trying to showcase that there is a fundamental difference. There's not really a lot of overlap. It's more complementary to each other, is the way I would say it. So before Tyler steps in, Don, the question, which scripting language would be useful to know ahead of time?
Oh, we primarily focus on Python because that's some of the tool sets that are designed for some of the industrial control protocols. We don't go into programming in Rust or Ruby or anything like that. So we found that students are typically more familiar with leveraging Python, but also working from the command prompt in Linux, and we really emphasize the use of Windows-based technologies, meaning PowerShell, batch scripting as well. So I would recommend being familiar or comfortable with interacting with those.
Cool. I'll answer this question because this will come up anyway. On demand or in person? So for the remainder of this year and going into next year, it's definitely going to be in person only, stateside. The reality is that we do have a mandate to bring this into an hybrid. Unlike 612, it's actually much easier to do with this particular course. So the idea is to be able to reach out to, I guess, larger parts of the globe sooner than later. So that's something to look towards. Coming closer into, early next year, I'll be in pretty much deep into that to figure that out. So yeah, so that's kind of the plan. So in person, and then with a future of being hybrid. On demand, it'd be ideal. There's some obvious hurdles with that because we have a in classroom range environment, which would, if for an on demand, that would have to be, either scheduled or set up 24/7 coverage. So at this point, I wouldn't think too much about on demand, but definitely as a hybrid.
Excellent. Thank you.
Tyler, do you want to add anything on student prereq?
I'm trying to figure out if this is like a prereq or an expectation or a hope, but the scripting language question was a good one, and it got me thinking down this track. So much of what we're trying to do here is to replicate, like Jason was saying, we have a distributed control system in the range for you all to interact with. So much of what we've presented in labs is taken from engagements that we've all done in our day jobs. So I think an appreciation for maybe from some of the stuff I like to present, getting out of your comfort zone and not using tools. We do a lot of living off the land stuff in the latter sections of the class. So to that question, PowerShell, very important because that's something you're going to find everywhere. To continue on the scripting languages, Python, like Don is saying, it's in my toolkit everywhere for protocol analysis, mocking up quick proof of concepts there. But yeah, I guess a appetite, a mindset of curiosity and an appetite for getting a flavor of realistic ICS pen testing. It's not going to be as cut and dried and quick and automated as what you might find in some of the other courses listed here, or what you might see on the IT side. It's going to be slower. What I keep thinking of our mini nested RDP windows simulating you start on enterprise and you've worked your way all the way down into the process control network. So you're going to have 5 RDP sessions open.
Yeah.
I hope that you can handle that. Just things like that. Things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're ever evolving to make sure that some of the hurdles are real world, but same token, we don't want them to take away from the experience and the lesson. But yeah, a little, just the right amount of burn is probably the right. I also want to highlight is I just want to be clear. I don't think this is a case of, oh, I haven't taken all 6 of these. That's okay. We're just kind of highlighting because some people do ask, where does this come from? If you were to put like the closest kind of brother would be the 560 in my mind. And the reason I bring that up is because I want to make it kind of clear that it's not to say if you've had some pen testing work and you haven't taken 560, that's fine. I think what I just want to highlight is the fact that we really don't want to overlap with other courses that are out there. I mean, it's an important thing SANS tries to avoid. So the idea being is that if you've taken 560, this would be a natural extension to that. If you haven't taken 560 and you got pen test jobs, or honestly, if we say this, there is an evolution. There's a reason why we have kind of these different levels. I've seen people show up the first SANS course and it's 612, right? So I mean, I wouldn't be scared. We're just, if you're really looking at like where you're going to get the most out of it, I think this is probably the list you want to look at. Look at what's in those syllabus on each one, and basically gauge it yourself to what you think. And the reason I bring that up is just because I don't want to put anybody off because it's like, oh, I haven't got 6 courses. That's not what this slide's really about. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is it's the list is to help people understand what background would be helpful, but certainly with our experience and instructing styles and the way we've written this course, it's there is some level set in there to catch people up more quickly. However, there will be that challenge of being a little confused by some of the topics and some of the techniques, and it's going to take a driven and motivated student to operate through this if it's their first class. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but if that's you and you show up, just let us know, and we'll be there to help you extra as much as possible throughout the week. So
we'll make it work. Absolutely. So
yeah, before you go on that, there's another question. I just don't want to wait till the end, only because sometimes we run out of time. So handling legacy operating systems and technologies. Well, I mean, we're using an ABB 800XA, so there you go. The reality is yes. I mean, 612 has a lot more legacy OSs. Um, this one we're trying to keep kind of a mix between some new but also some old. And when it comes to living off the land, some of the techniques, the idea is to try to be complementary. But that's a good question. Obviously, it comes with challenges because every organization is at various degrees of maturity as far as their technical stack. So, the point is, yes, the stuff will be covered, and if you show up and, you know, what I like to do is an introduction across the room, where everybody's come from, what's some of the stuff they're interested in specifically, and if this came out, it's like, all right, great. Then we typically will shift gears on certain content to make sure we cover those pieces. And I found that's the only way you can deal with an ICS course, because you can't create 4 days of content and have a script and cover every scenario that exists out there. We as instructors in the ICS space have to be agile to be able to accommodate the type of student and the type of sector they're coming from. So yeah,
Yeah.
just
I think that's where my point about the critical thinking is. We're going to give students an introduction to how to manage those types of situations, and you'll see that as we're going through, and certainly the students will come back realizing that they are ready to manage those situations where there's legacy systems and technologies and so forth.
The
Awesome. Okay, so
techniques and processes and methodology that you're going to leave class with, you can apply to legacy and new systems. They're going to apply across the board. The mindset and the attitude that we will help you develop throughout class is going to let you understand how to treat legacy devices with the respect and the care that is necessary in an ICS environment.
absolutely.
well,
Thanks, Tyler.
I'll
Okay,
talk about the kit if you don't mind.
yeah,
I'll
yeah,
at least
please go
start.
ahead,
You
man.
can add to it, only because these kits are, as one of the, it takes multiple people to develop one of these kits, if you can believe it. So this is our third kit based on the Click platform. Um, Obviously, the circuit board, the sector we're covering with this particular kit is an LNG. That's what we're using as an example, as a simulation in order to discuss specific topics and so forth. So we find that these kits are very useful as a training tool to really kind of bring concepts to life. Also allows us to really kind of bring real coding. Sure, there's some simulation, there's some fancy stuff on the kit, but from an operations standpoint, it's very much, there's a lot of sequence of event stuff that needs to come together in order to perform. And so being able to demonstrate and teach with those platforms, we found, has been very well received. And the difference being this processor, even though those that have taken 515 might see, hey, it looks like the same one. The processor actually on this one has some wireless capability, so we've upgraded to a different processor, which we can then tap into. Obviously, the circuit board is different, and all the logic underneath. So the way the layout of this room is, just like before, each student's going to get a kit. They get to keep it, take it home. In fact, they can start integrating these kits together. If you take in 515, 613, and 612. Eventually we're going to have, and some other ICS instructors already started developing additional content to be able to glue these kits together, but we're going to be more official in the coming year, I would say, is where we'll start putting these together, so you can have a fancy lab at home that covers power, LNG, and manufacturing. So that'll happen at the student side. So anybody's taking 612 will immediately looking at this table set, we realize there's less stuff on the table. But in fact, we have a larger control at the front of the room. So our ABB system, we have the range environment in this is much larger from a VM standpoint. So the technology stack, basically carrying it right from enterprise all the way down through, basically every student is pretty much has access to, I don't know, 7 or 10 VMs that all coordinate together and perform different roles. So we've pretty much tried to, stand that up. So the ABB system, you'll actually get into that and you'll start identifying weaknesses down at the operational level, not just within. The goal of this course, just to recognize, is we're not there to attack the DCS or identify new vulnerabilities. If we do that, that may upset some people, which has been one of the challenges in selecting a vendor and choosing a vendor. We wanted obviously something different than Rockwell, but the same token is we have to be conscious of the fact that they don't really appreciate it if this course suddenly showed new O days. So it's important that that's kind of not the content here with the ABB. The Click platform gives us more opportunity to do to that type of work, but same token is in the VMs themselves. So just trying to highlight that and set the stage. I don't want somebody looking at this saying, "Ooh, I'm going to learn how to break an ABB." It's not really the idea, but also it coincides to Tyler's point earlier, which is at some point you have to assess, a running environment. You don't have, you're moving out of a lab and you're moving to a production. And it could be the production has been running for 15, 20 years. And the reality is you have to be able to operate, and achieve an outcome without, breaking the system. Um, so that poses some challenges. And so we kind of walk through that later on in the day. So that's just kind of level setting. We do get into different systems that we don't really have talked too much about in other courses. So, different targets and different conversations. So I'm going to leave that as a secret. You guys can figure that out later. Anyway, but point being is, yeah, we're pretty proud of the range we have, but this current setup I think is fantastic. It gives us the opportunity. Definitely one of our big goals in this course is we had to have a hybrid element. It was a necessity. We couldn't just have in person again. We already had that hands-on piece, so it didn't make sense to hinder ourselves and more importantly, hinder potential students because basically, we want to train everybody. That's our goal, right? We want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to get trained. So we just lost Don on the slides. So that's
Start asking us questions, folks.
so I don't know what happened, but see if I can. We will quickly recover. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, the range is super cool, and I do love how we've configured it. Again, we're starting high level, we move down through, we get all the way down into the DCS and then pull it back high level. And I think one thing we haven't really talked about yet, Jason, is like what is this methodology that we're
Yeah,
introducing? I don't know if that's on one of these later slides. I think we're going to start going through some of these upcoming sections, but
yeah. I'm
effectively,
just trying. Look, I'm rushing to get the PowerPoint back up. Apparently, Don lost power and internet as a
nice.
result. So, um, that's not fun. All right, I'm going to try this. We'll see if it works or if it exposes everything I have on my screen. Something will happen. Um, let's see if I can.
Hi guys, while you're troubleshooting that, I did have a question come through. Tyler, maybe you can help answer this one. The question was, I may have missed this, but where is the range located?
It is mobile. We bring it with us in a big box.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. And
Yeah,
thank you to everyone for your patience.
yeah, it's a number of servers in one shipping container. Jason, what are these called? I'm showing my
Cases.
naivety. Yeah. One case is all of the networking and VM infrastructure, and the other case, which you saw in that little picture on the bottom right of the slide, is the ABB DCS itself.
Is that up now?
Shiptainer. Nice. It
Are
is
we
up, I
live?
see it.
All right. Yeah, so I don't know if Don's going to call in or what, but yeah, so
Let
we'll
me
just Sure, go
Let
ahead.
me hit this question real quick. How much of the IT side, well, let me read the whole thing. The general IT GPen class goes pretty deep on the IT side. How much of the IT side do you cover as well, or do you take the assumption that you have already compromised the IT area? So we work from an assumed breach perspective. So there's not going to be any initial access. We're starting with the low privilege domain account. And from there, we're actually trying to move through the IT side of house really quickly. So we have just a single lab that even touches Active Directory from the active pen testing side. Um, we work through that, and then from there on out, you are interacting with IT systems. You're going to find IT systems in industrial control system environments all the time. So when we think about IT technologies, IT protocols, IT systems like Windows servers, ubiquitous. This is what we're talking about at the higher levels of an architecture model. What we're focusing on though is how to, and I think this differentiates it from GPen, is how to do that without any tools. So we're really, really, really driving home the living off the land aspect in the active testing portions of this course. And there's two main reasons in my mind to do that. One, in industrial control system environments, asset owners may often say, we don't trust your tools. We don't want those in there. Have you vetted them? What are they going to do? Can you promise us there's no impact? Maybe we can't install stuff. Here's your jump host. Can't do anything other than give you an account. So you need to be able to test without your standard tools that a lot of these other classes and a lot of probably your and my prior experiences has made you very comfortable with. The other big reason, and this goes back to a point that Jason made early on, is why are we doing this? Why are we assessing these systems? We're assessing them so that we can protect them from damage, from attacks, but by whom? Adversaries. And how are adversaries attacking those systems? More and more contemporary adversaries and threat groups are using living off the land attacks. And anyway, that's what we're trying to drive home here. So there's IT infrastructure, but we're not focused on that nearly as much as how do we move through there and get to the meat and potatoes of the distributed control system that sits underneath it.
Yeah, and also identifying along the way and I think this is also where the difference lies, and this is more on section 3 and 4 of the day, but it's identifying what information from a reconnaissance standpoint is available that adversaries would use in order to farther understand and learn the environment. So it's really kind of like utilizing those systems, yes, in the context of ICS and understanding that there is, there's in order to do the movements an adversary needs, there's also activities they need to perform to collect and understand where they're at. So, it's kind of taking that approach as well instead of just sweeping for CVEs and saying, oh, okay, here's the ones you need to go focus on. That's
Yep.
not quite where we're focused. There's no nessus in
Well,
this course.
no Nessus in this course, no 0 days, no CVs. Yeah. Another really good question came up. So then do you conceptualize the living off the land tools into categories so we can then correlate that back to the specific vendors we may be trying to assess? We talk about this a little bit in class. I won't try and dig into it too deeply, but I play fast and loose with the language of living off the land. I think it's just using whatever's at hand. So if that means your typical LOL bins, GTFO bins, like the things you're familiar with in a Windows or Linux environment that have built-in functionality that can be abused to do different things, we mean that. We also mean using vendor tooling or using the utilities that are on an engineering workstation that are there for operators to troubleshoot systems, to view the network. For me, that's also living off the land. And then ICS protocols also have built-in functionality that can be abused. To me, that's also living off the land. So I don't know if that answers your question. Those are the categories as I think of them. When we communicate that to specific vendors or asset owners, I think it's really important. This gets into the latter sections on reporting is like, how do you talk about the issue that you found and the fix you're going to propose? impact is so crucial there. Like, what is the thing? Why does it matter? What did we do with it?
Cool. That answered it. All right, Don.
Sweet.
I think if we can we don't have to spend too much time on each of these slides, but welcome back to the land of power.
I don't even know if you can hear me. I'm running on cellular
I hear
and
you.
battery life. So thanks and thanks for covering a section 1. Do you want to go to section 2?
We haven't covered section 1.
Oh, we
It's all
haven't
you.
covered section 1.
Yeah.
So I mean, we've only got 10 minutes left. You know, we'll go through this pretty quickly. Section 1, you know, the intent was to set the stage of doing ICS and doing security assessments and penetration testing in these control environments. So certainly helping people understand what the difference is between attacking IT environments and then also attacking control environments. There's different TTPs that are threat actors are using. In addition to what we're experiencing in our corporate environments, we're experiencing the same and additional types of tactics and techniques within our control environments. So helping people understand that and actually how to really drill down into that more specifically. We made sure that we spent some time talking about physics of processes and helping people understand the conditions that occur naturally, the things that threat actors might be trying to achieve, and then also we need to help people understand sometimes their actions that they take within these environments can lead to consequences that involve human safety, but also process safety. What we've done is we've taken, you know, we're using the student PLC, the student kit, to evaluate some of those conditions to help reinforce some of the concepts that we're trying to apply there. One of the labs goes into understanding insecure remote access, but then also understanding the process procedure. Can you go to section 2?
Oh, that's me.
Yeah, so in section 2, this is really where we start drilling into the in section 1, we do cover the different types of security assessments that there are to help kind of, like I said, level set before. We go into the actual security assessment process, both from a security assessment standpoint and a penetration test. And one of the things that I tried to integrate into this area was helping people understand the fact that this is all vulnerability assessments that's going to be feeding back into the organization's risk management program. Now, certainly one of the international standards around that, I really point to it because it's the basis for the approach in most industrial sectors is 62443, ISA IEC 62443. So students are going to understand how this vulnerability assessment information is going to feed back into a risk management program, which also feeds into the OT cybersecurity program. We're going to be, you know, really stressing some of that, how to work with the OT stakeholders to make sure that they're comfortable to help the consultants and the other team members that are doing the assessments understand what they're going to focus on, gather information about that, and really, you know, what I like to point out is doing that initial high-level risk assessment. If it's already done, then that's great. But in some cases, you might be providing that as the first part of a security assessment. So helping people understand that, getting into some passive information gathering, some of the things that the consultants or the security team members doing the security assessment or pen test, the actions they might be taking, or actions that can be taken by the OT stakeholders to gather information and feed the security assessment, doing some of that passive information gathering and risk evaluation, and then getting into moving from passive analysis into a little bit more of an active analysis in preparation for Section 3's penetration testing. So the labs definitely reinforce understanding the process, understanding information gathering, that passive analysis, and then going in and really kind of augmenting some people's understanding of network analysis, system hardening, Active Directory implementation analysis, and using that as a part of the vulnerability assessment when we're leading into section 3. And I'll pass it off to Tyler for that.
We're going to skip to section 4. We talked through a lot of section 3 here. It's that top-down active testing with an ICS flavor. So doing this safely and efficiently and effectively in a production environment, and getting to the point where we have access to ICS systems and information that allows us to develop an ICS attack, which is going to be section 4.
Yeah, so section 4, we call this the bottom up. So this is when we kind of like shift gears a bit. We start looking at the process itself and understanding, what can be done and performed in, a negative fashion against the operation. More importantly, against the mechanical system. One thing I've always felt in the past, is, you can have all kinds of findings. And the reality is that many organizations have a hard time prioritizing, understanding where they need to focus. And the risk element, there may be a risk analysis that's been performed that can be falled back on. However, in my experience, I feel that there's a lot of nuance that gets missed sometimes when you're getting into talking specifically to the person that's responsible for operating or maintaining a physical system. So the idea being in bottom up is that you're really looking at it from a process standpoint, and identifying that this is the thing that can cause the worst day. Could be very impactful to society and their clientele and everybody. So the idea being is let's dig in deep. It's a stretch goal to some that will come to the class, but I think it's an important piece to talk about, because ultimately we have to recall that our adversaries have operational knowledge. They know how to go after these things. We have to start talking about it, and we have to start looking at this level. The idea being as well, and this kind of leads to reporting, when an understanding of what can be done, then we can look at from where that can be performed. And we start looking at various vectors. So it's kind of like flipping the entire assessment over. Instead of just looking top down and getting, all that flavor, it's flipping it on its head and start looking at bottom up and say, hey, what can be done and where can I do this? And what other vectors have we not uncovered? And start looking at that angle, which then can be brought into the report to aligning these things together. So now you have, depending on where you, I guess, what area you're focusing your assessment on, the idea is, how does it relate contextually to a weakness or a finding? How does that or could be used against an organization to effectively trigger, the so-called bad day event based on a process, right? So it really kind of brings things home. It also gets an opportunity to really speak to the OT team, really understand on board, so that when you're finding these findings, you can then start really understanding the operational impacts associated to the findings, but also uncovering some of those requirements that they need, because sometimes a weakness is also a necessity, because reality is they have to operate with resilience, and you have to balance the security choices and your controls with the operational resilience. Just like recently I started coining a term as well, is we have to start looking at operational response as well as incident response. The two need to come together. And the only way we can do that is if we start looking at this, as with our evil hat, and trying to flip people on to try to say, hey, how do we actually prevent these scenarios from happening, right? So it does trigger many more activities, monitoring, architecture, and various other things. But yeah, so that's what section 4 is about. That gets into the nitty gritty. So yeah, I think that
Hey,
kind of
Jason,
sums
can
it
you
up.
skip ahead 2 slides, I think? So
Two,
there will be a capstone. What we really want to
Oops.
point out before everybody starts dropping off is that we're into our beta. At the end of August 25th through 29th, we still have a few seats left for the beta in Salt Lake City. And then, of course, we do have on the schedule right now 2 runs of this. We might possibly add more, but definitely these 2 runs. We've got the Sands Houston in November, the first week in November, and then the second week of December, we've got the Sands CDI, the really big Sands event, coupled with the summit that's there as well. So we have a couple of runs of these right now before the end of the year. And like I said, the beta, you can go out and register on site. There's still a few seats left. The registration's still open for that.
Sweet.
And then, yeah, and other than that, Jen, I think we're at time. Do we have any more questions? Do we have time to answer questions?
No more questions came through, but Jason, Tyler, Don, thank you so much for your presentation and helping to bring content like this to the community. To our audience, thank you so much for joining us. For a schedule of all upcoming and archived SANS webcasts, including this one, please visit sans.org/webcasts. You can find your CPEs for all completed webcasts by logging into your SANS portal account, navigating to your account dashboard, then clicking My Webcasts. You can then download your CPE on the right-hand side of the page. So thank you everyone for joining us. I'll be dropping a link to the ICS 613 course page if you'd like to take a look at that. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you, Jason, Tyler, and Dawn. And we hope everyone has a great one.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.